My parents forced me to quit college to support my sister's dreams. Now I'm rich, independent, and they're begging me to save their failing home. I've always been the responsible one, the kid who fixed everything my parents broke. While other kids my age were out chasing dreams or making mistakes, I was the one patching up walls after arguments, paying late bills, and making sure my little sister, Lily, had what she needed. My mother used to say, "Family comes first, always," and I believed her like gospel. It wasn't advice. It was conditioning, whispered into every decision I ever made. We weren't poor, but we lived paycheck to paycheck. My father was a quiet man, the kind who spoke more with sighs than words. My mother, though, she ruled the house with an iron voice. Everything had to orbit around her sense of order and pride. Lily, on the other hand, was sunshine in their eyes, smart, charming, and endlessly praised. "She's going places," they'd say. "You just have to help her get there." When I got my acceptance letter from a top university, a full scholarship, I thought things would finally change. I remember holding the letter at the dinner table, my heart pounding, waiting for a smile, some proud tears. But all my mother said was, "That's wonderful, honey. But who's going to help us now?" My father didn't meet my eyes. Lily barely looked up from her phone. The joy drained out of me like air from a punctured tire. That night, I overheard them whispering. Mom said, "If he leaves, what happens to us?" Dad murmured, "Maybe he can defer for a year, just until Lily finishes her degree." And just like that, my dream started to sound selfish. Like leaving would be betrayal. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the scholarship letter folded neatly on my nightstand, feeling its weight like guilt. I told myself I could wait a year, just 1 year, but deep down, something in me already knew. Once I gave in, they'd never let me go. When I told my parents I might defer my admission for a year to help out, they didn't even pretend to protest. My mother just smiled. That tight, satisfied kind of smile that told me she'd gotten exactly what she wanted. "That's my boy," she said, touching my cheek. "You always do what's right for the family." My father nodded silently, and Lily just shrugged like my decision didn't matter at all. It stung more than I'd admit. The plan was simple. I'd work for a year, help with bills, maybe save a little, then head to college next fall. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months of double shifts and never-ending emergencies. My mother claimed her back was acting up, so she couldn't do much housework. My father's hours were cut at the factory, and Lily, of course, had her studies to focus on. I was the glue holding everything together. Working, cooking, paying rent, and yet somehow I was still the ungrateful one when I looked tired. One evening, after another 12-hour day, I came home to find Lily complaining that her tuition payment was overdue. My mother turned to me with that same tone she used when I was a kid who'd broken something. "You'll handle it, right?" she said, not asking, telling. "She can't lose her semester, not when she's so close to making something of herself." I remember my voice cracking as I said, "Mom, I'm trying. I can't cover everything." Her expression hardened instantly. "Don't you dare talk back. We've done everything for you, and this is how you repay us?" And there it was. The guilt card, played with precision. That night I sent the tuition payment anyway. I told myself it was fine, that I could always reapply next year. But the pit in my stomach told a different story. My dreams were slowly being replaced with theirs, and the scary part was, they made it sound like love. As I lay in bed listening to Lily laugh on the phone with her friends, I couldn't help but wonder, when did helping family start to feel like being held hostage? By the time Lily's second semester started, I had completely fallen into a routine. Work, bills, sleep, repeat. My life wasn't mine anymore. It revolved around keeping everyone else afloat. I'd wake up at 6 a.m., fix breakfast for the family, then rush to my warehouse job before taking evening shifts at the repair shop. My body ached constantly, but when I'd come home and see the lights on, the groceries stocked, and everyone comfortable, I'd tell myself it was worth it. That's what good sons did, right? Except Lily never noticed. She started coming home with new clothes, salon hair, and expensive makeup, claiming it was for her image at school. One day, I found a $200 perfume bottle in her room, one I knew I hadn't bought. When I mentioned it, Mom jumped to her defense instantly. "She has to look presentable, dear," she said, waving her hand. "You wouldn't understand how much pressure girls face." I swallowed my frustration. "I just don't think it's fair that—" "Fair?" She cut me off, her tone sharp as a knife. "You think life's been fair to us? To your father? To me?" Dad stayed silent, pretending to read the newspaper. Lily rolled her eyes and walked off. That night, while I was cleaning dishes, I caught my reflection in the window. Tired eyes, cracked hands, a face that didn't look 28 anymore. I realized no one saw me as a person in that house, just a tool, something to fix their problems. One Sunday, I overheard Lily on the phone, laughing. "He's basically our live-in servant," she said to someone. "Mom says he's too soft to ever leave." My chest went cold. I wanted to barge in, scream, tell her I wasn't her servant, but I didn't. I just stood there, frozen, listening to her laughter echo through the walls I'd paid to keep standing. And for the first time, I felt something stronger than guilt. Resentment, the kind that sits in your gut and waits for the right moment to wake up. A few months later, I got an email from the university that had once felt like my lifeline. The subject line read, "Final offer to reapply." For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen, heart pounding, palms sweating, like it was a message from the version of myself I'd buried. The scholarship committee remembered me and said I could re-enroll the following semester if I confirmed by the end of the month. For the first time in years, I felt something flicker inside me. Hope. That night at dinner, I brought it up carefully. The university reached out. "They're offering me another shot," I said, trying to sound calm. My mom didn't even look up from her plate. "Oh, honey, that's sweet," she said. "But you can't just abandon us now. Lily's about to start her final year and you know your father's hours got cut again." I turned to Dad, searching for any sign of support. "Just for 1 year. I can manage part-time work and online classes." He sighed, folding his napkin. "Son, you've always been better with your hands than books. Maybe this is just life showing you where you belong." It felt like someone had poured cold water down my spine. I wanted to shout, to tell them this wasn't where I belonged, that I was tired of being everyone's safety net. But the words died in my throat when Lily spoke softly, like she was doing me a favor. "Maybe college just isn't your path, you know? You're already helping so much." That night, I overheard my mother again. Her voice was low but sharp. "He's simple-minded, just like his father. Keep him busy, and he'll never leave." Lily laughed, not cruelly, just casually, like they were discussing the weather. I sat in the dark hallway listening, my hands shaking. That was the moment it clicked. My sacrifice wasn't an accident. It was strategy. I wasn't their son anymore. I was their worker. And for the first time, I realized they never planned to let me go. After that night, something inside me shifted. I stopped trying to impress them, but I still did what needed to be done. Quietly, efficiently, without expectation. I started keeping records of every payment I made, every grocery run, every transfer for Lily's tuition. It wasn't about revenge yet. It was about survival. I needed proof. Something to remind myself that my life wasn't an endless favor I owed them. But even with the numbers in black and white, I couldn't escape the feeling that my existence had become background noise in their world. Lily failed her internship that summer and blamed me for it. "You're always so negative," she snapped when I didn't celebrate her half-hearted effort. "Maybe if you were more supportive, things would go better for me." Mom didn't even hesitate to side with her. "You're poisoning this household with your attitude," she said, voice trembling with fake disappointment. "Do you enjoy bringing everyone down?" I wanted to laugh, but my throat burned instead. "I work 70 hours a week for this family. What more do you want?" My father slammed his fist on the table. "Watch your tone. That's your mother and sister you're talking to." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a man who'd surrendered years ago. It scared me because I realized I was turning into him. The argument escalated until my mom screamed, "If you're so miserable, then leave." And when I didn't answer, she added, "Ungrateful boy, after all we've done for you." That was the moment Dad stood up, walked over, and slapped me across the face. The sound cracked through the kitchen like lightning. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, cheeks stinging, eyes dry. Later that night, I packed a small bag. No goodbyes, no explanations, just quiet steps down the hallway of a house that had never felt like home. When the front door closed behind me, it didn't feel like running away. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. The night I left, the world felt both terrifying and alive. I had one backpack, $200 in cash, and no idea where I was going. I found a small, crumbling apartment above a mechanic's shop downtown, the kind of place where the walls smelled like oil and the floor creaked under every step. It was dirty, but it was mine. For the first time in years, silence didn't mean tension. It meant peace. I found a job at a tech repair store, fixing phones and laptops. The work was honest, and strangely, I was good at it. My hands remembered every wire, every screw, every careful motion from years of fixing things my family broke. But now, every repair I made felt like I was putting myself back together, slowly, quietly. I lived on instant noodles and canned soup, saving every extra dollar. When I wasn't working, I was learning. Coding tutorials, business podcasts, late-night YouTube lectures, I devoured everything. I'd sit on the cold floor with my laptop, whispering to myself, "I'm not useless. I'm not a failure. I can make something of this." Weeks turned into months, and though I barely slept, I started feeling something I hadn't in a long time. Purpose. No one was calling me to fix their mess. No one was telling me I owed them anything. Every small success, a client's smile, an online certificate, a repaired laptop, felt like a rebellion against the life I'd been trapped in. One rainy night, as thunder echoed outside, I stared out the window of that tiny apartment and realized something powerful. I didn't miss them. Not the shouting, not the guilt, not even the illusion of family. It was a lonely kind of freedom. But it was mine. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of something bigger. 6 months after leaving home, life started to shift in ways I couldn't have imagined. The tech repair shop had become my safe zone. Small, quiet, filled with the smell of solder and coffee. My boss, an older man named Ravi, treated me like an equal, not a servant. One evening, as I was repairing a cracked tablet, a familiar face walked in. James, an old college friend. I hadn't seen him since before everything fell apart. "Man, where've you been?" he laughed, looking me up and down. "We thought you dropped off the planet." I shrugged, keeping it casual, just figuring life out. When I told him I'd been working in repairs, his eyes lit up. "You still code, right?" My startup's desperate for someone who understands both hardware and software. I almost said no. It sounded too good to be true, but something in me refused to let fear decide again. That night, I stayed up, reworking my old code samples, hands shaking from both nerves and excitement. Within a week, I was hired part-time. The startup was scrappy, just a few people in a cramped co-working space, but they had heart. I'd fix bugs by day, repair devices by night, and survive on caffeine and stubborn hope. There was energy. In that chaos, the kind I'd never felt under my parents' roof. 3 months later, our app, a tool for remote device diagnostics, went viral after a major tech influencer featured it in a video. Overnight, the company exploded. We were suddenly profitable. My shares, small as they were, turned into something real. More money than I'd ever seen in my life. When the first payment hit my account, I just stared at the screen. My throat tightened. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to make it. That night, I didn't celebrate. I just sat in my dark apartment, tears in my eyes, whispering. The words I'd never dared to say out loud before. I did this, without them. But just as I started to feel peace, my phone buzzed. Mom. and somehow I already knew it wasn't a coincidence. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. My mother's name felt foreign on my phone, a relic from a life I'd outgrown. When I finally picked up, her voice came through shaky but practiced, the way she always sounded when she wanted something. "Sweetheart, we've been so worried," she began, skipping right over the months of silence. "You don't even call your poor mother anymore." I leaned back, exhaling slowly. "You only call when you need something. What's wrong this time?" There was a pause. Then came the sigh, that heavy, rehearsed sigh I knew too well. "The house," she said. "Your father's job was cut again, and the bank's threatening foreclosure. We might lose everything." I didn't say anything. The words should have hurt, but they didn't. I'd carried that house on my back for years, every bill, every repair, every ounce of emotional labor, and now it was collapsing without me. There was poetic justice in that. Then came Lily. A text, minutes after I hung up. "Hey, big bro, it's been forever. I'm so proud of you. I heard you're doing really well. Can we talk? I miss you." Her timing was perfect, right when Mom's guilt wasn't landing hard enough. I almost laughed. I scrolled through her profile out of curiosity. New car, expensive clothes, beach vacations. She looked every bit the golden child, but I could see it in her captions. "There's grateful, but tired. Hustle never stops." It was all crumbling. That night, I sat in my dim apartment staring at my bank account. I could have saved them easily. One transfer and their problems would vanish, but so would every boundary I'd built. My phone kept lighting up. Missed calls, voicemails, texts from both of them, blending apology and manipulation into the same sentences. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. They hadn't reached out because they loved me. They reached out because they'd run out of ways to use me. Still, a small part of me whispered, "What if you're wrong? What if they really need you this time?" A week later, I drove back to my hometown for the first time in nearly 2 years. The roads looked smaller, the houses older, the colors duller than I remembered. My childhood street felt haunted, not by ghosts but by the weight of everything I'd once carried. When I parked outside our old house, I sat there for a full minute before stepping out. The windows were cracked, the garden overgrown. It wasn't just a home in trouble. It was a reflection of them. Mom opened the door before I even knocked. Her eyes went wide, a blend of relief and calculation. "Oh, thank God," she said, pulling me into a hug I didn't return. The air inside smelled like mildew and stale coffee. Dad sat on the couch, thinner, quieter. "We didn't think you'd come," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. "I almost didn't," I said flatly. Mom's tone softened immediately. "Honey, things have been hard. We made mistakes, but family sticks together." "Does it?" I asked, taking a folder out of my bag. I laid it on the table. Receipts, transfers, bills, years of proof that I had kept them alive. "This is everything I paid for. Rent, groceries, Lily's tuition. Every dollar you said we didn't have." Her face drained of color. "Why would you keep all this?" "Because you made me feel crazy for remembering." For a long moment, no one spoke. The house creaked under the silence. Then I asked, "Where's Lily?" Mom hesitated before answering. She moved abroad. She's having some troubles with credit cards. She said you'd understand." I almost laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Of course she did." Dad looked up then, his voice barely a whisper. "We just need help, son. One last time." I met his eyes and said, calm but firm, "You don't need my help. You need consequences." Mom's hand trembled. "So, you're just going to watch us lose everything?" "No," I said, standing up. "I'm going to watch you live with what you built." And as I turned for the door, I realized they hadn't lost a home. They'd lost control. I thought leaving again would be easier the second time, but walking away from that house felt different now. It wasn't just about freedom. It was about closure. As I drove back toward the city, I ignored the dozen missed calls from my mother. Each one came closer together, more frantic than the last. When I finally stopped at a gas station, I listened to one of her voicemails, her voice breaking between sobs. "Please, sweetheart, your father's blood pressure's gone up. Lily's in trouble overseas. We can't lose the house. You're all we have left." For a moment, guilt tried to crawl its way back into me, that old reflex to fix everything. But then I remembered all the nights I'd cried silently in that same house, begging for their approval, only to be told I wasn't enough. The guilt evaporated. Later that night, as I sat in my apartment, Lily called on video. Her tone was syrupy sweet, eyes filled with crocodile tears. "Hey, big brother," she said, like nothing had happened. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. But I really need your help. My rent's overdue, and Mom said you'd—" I cut her off. "Stop. Don't do that." "Do what?" She blinked, feigning innocence. "Pretend this is love when it's debt collection." Her expression cracked for just a second, the fake smile fading into irritation. "You've changed," she snapped. "You think money makes you better than us?" "No," I said calmly. "It reminds me I don't owe you any more." There was silence on both ends, the kind that carries years of buried truth. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse. I just said, "Family doesn't use you and call it love." Then I ended the call. For the first time, it wasn't anger that filled me. It was peace. A cold, steady kind of peace that only comes when you stop bleeding for people who hand you the knife. Still, as I sat there staring at my dark phone screen, I knew this wasn't the end. They'd never take silence for an answer. It's strange how peace doesn't arrive with fireworks. It settles in quietly, like the absence of pain. Weeks passed after that final call, and for once, my life didn't revolve around crisis or guilt. I woke up to my own alarms, cooked my own meals, worked because I wanted to, not because someone demanded it. My apartment was small, but every corner of it was mine, a sanctuary built from everything they said I'd never have. The startup kept growing. Investors came in, partnerships expanded, and I found myself managing a small team. Sometimes I'd catch myself smiling in meetings, not out of pride, but disbelief. The kid who wasn't college material now had engineers reporting to him, and the more my life stabilized, the more I realized how deeply chaos had been my normal. One evening, as the city lights shimmered outside my window, I got an email from my mother. The subject line simply read, "We're sorry." The message was long, pages of excuses disguised as apologies. "We didn't know how hard it was for you," she wrote. "We thought we were protecting Lily's future. We only did what we thought was best for the family." I read every word, then closed my laptop without replying. I wasn't angry, just tired. Sorry didn't erase the years of manipulation, the nights I went hungry so they could live comfortably. I knew what would come next. Another plea for money, another emotional rope thrown to pull me back into their storm. Instead, I opened a new document and started writing something different. My story. Not for revenge, but for understanding. Every paragraph felt like exhaling poison I'd been holding in for years. When I finally hit save, I realized I didn't need their validation anymore. Their voices, once so loud in my head, had finally gone quiet. But, as peaceful as it was, part of me still wondered, what happens when the people who raised you try to rewrite the past? It's been 2 years since that last email, and in all that time, I never once looked back, until last week, when I received a handwritten letter in my mailbox. No return address, just my name in my mother's delicate cursive. For a moment I considered throwing it away, but curiosity won. Inside was a short note. No excuses, no guilt trips. Just one line that read, "We were wrong about what love meant. If you ever want to talk, we'll listen this time." Beneath it was a photograph. The old house newly painted, the garden cleaned up. It looked smaller than I remembered. I don't know if they expected a reply, but for the first time, their words didn't twist the knife. They just landed softly. A week later, I drove by the house, not to go inside, just to see. The windows gleamed in the sunlight, the porch creaked under my feet, and the same tree I used to climb as a kid stood taller than ever. I stood there for a long time, realizing I didn't hate them anymore. I didn't forgive them, not fully, but I didn't need to. The power they once had over me was gone. I whispered to the wind, "You taught me that love is sacrifice, but never that sacrifice should only go one way." As I turned to leave, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not sadness, but freedom. True, quiet freedom. The kind that doesn't need revenge or validation. The kind that simply exists when the pain runs out of places to live. When I got back to my car, I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't see the dutiful son anymore. I saw a man who survived. A man who learned that walking away wasn't selfish. It was the only way to finally come home. And for the first time in my life, I smiled without guilt.